Greetings, everyone. I hope you're well. Greetings from New Zealand. We'll begin today with doing a guided meditation. Begin by sitting upright, as if you were in the Dhamma hall. Take a deep breath, bring your attention into your body. Bring your awareness into your surroundings. Noticing sounds, noticing silence. As we bring our awareness into the present moment, you can experience temperature. With our eyes closed, we can still feel our bodies, so we become aware of physical sensations. As we become more attuned and aware of our body, aware of all the physical sensations within our body, the posture of sitting, and naturally begin to notice there are these sensations caused by the air flowing in, flowing out of our bodies. Simply being present, simply observing, as we sit. Does the breath change? Does the breath remain the same? Where can you feel the breath? that part of the mind which is able to be aware. Just watch impartially, waiting. When will the next breath begin? How deep will it go? Notice any tendency to expect the next breath to be exactly like the last breath, leading to a subtle control. Approaching each breath with a complete sense of, I have no expectations. When thoughts arise, that's fine. It's normal. But see if you can merely recognize them as thoughts, nothing more. Thought arises, whether it's a memory, a future plan, important thought, stupid thought, whatever the thought is, it's just a thought. See it, accept it, let it go. We don't have to deal with that right now. Back and check, are we breathing in, or are we breathing out? Whatever thought arises, you just tell yourself, not now, not now. I can deal with that later. Not now. Notice and appreciate the space and the silence within your mind. Silence in your environment, silence within your own mind. Notice the quality of silence, the absence of something. Notice the space within your own mind, space around your thoughts, the space within which you experience physical sensations, sounds, mental states. These all arise within a greater spaciousness. Notice the quality of space. Space, silence, they are the absence of something. And that absence is intrinsically calming, peaceful, undisturbing, still. As we become more relaxed, how does that affect our breath? observing without expectations. As we come to the end of this meditation, once again, see if you can pay attention to every detail. Last 3 breaths. Entering your body, pausing, flowing out.
Good afternoon, Ajahn. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, Ajahn. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please go ahead
Okay.
and press the Dhamma talk.
Brahmacaloka Dipati Saha Santi Dasatha Paraja Kajatika Dese Tudama Anukam Bimam Paja.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasam. Greetings from New Zealand. We are entering spring here in the southern hemisphere, so we have beautiful weather. New Zealand continues to be relatively normal, blissfully normal, without too many crises. We have no coronavirus to speak of at the moment. We're pretty much coronavirus free, no community transmissions at least. So it's safe in that regard. Since we last Skyped, I actually had a coronavirus test, which was easy to do here. It's so easy to do here in New Zealand. You just go 10 minutes down the road and make an appointment, and that takes 5 minutes, and within 24 hours I got the result negative, so I'm fine. But anyways, it was a good experience, good to know. So things are surprisingly normal here in New Zealand. If I didn't watch any news, I would think the world is just such a wonderful, peaceful place. We have today's actually the national election. We have a relatively intelligent and kind leader, and she's up for re-election today. Probably will be re-elected, but the future is always uncertain. So there's no big crises here, relatively peaceful. Just the normal dramas of life, which is refreshing in a way. Normal dramas just of old age, sickness, and death, and human relationships, and just basic ordinary practice. But one of the things that still comes up regularly for people around the world, in many ways, is fear and anxiety, and often that can lead to depression. We're very fortunate here to essentially have our normal schedule. We're back to our relatively pre-coronavirus schedule here at the monastery. But I know in many places in the world that's not the case. And with virus cases increasing in many places in the world, with social unrest increasing, with tensions around elections, there's a lot that people are dealing with. How do you then deal with that in a way which is not going to just affect our life overly? Of course, we're going to be affected by it somewhat. But you don't want to let anxiety and fears control our life. How do you live in the midst of all of these sometimes craziness that's going on, sometimes very important things going on, and still maintain a sense of peace and balance? This is always a question, but sometimes it seems to be even more pronounced. There are real dangers in the world, for sure. But so much of what causes people suffering in their own minds are dangers that are merely self-created, unnecessary, fears that don't really exist outside of the thoughts and imagination within a person's own mind. So it's helpful just to clarify. In the past, I've spoken about wise dangers and real dangers, wise recognition of dangers, and the opposite. Now, for the ordinary person, we tend to neglect looking at the real dangers in life, and we tend to be preoccupied with the imagined dangers, things that aren't real. And of course, that's not a recipe for peace of mind. So with, imagined dangers is just no end to all the things that you could imagine that could go wrong in the future. And not all of it is irrational. Sometimes it is rational, but then how do you live with that? How do you hold that in your heart so that you're not just living a joyless life worrying about the future, right? Life's no fun. You can't even when things are fine, you're always worrying about the future, anxious, then you can't really enjoy it. So this is a very important step because you'll never be able to develop samadhi or deeper states of inner peace if we're preoccupied with these habits of thinking. So it's very helpful to see if we can develop wise habits, change our habits, make a conscious effort to change our habits of how we approach, say, the concept of future, ideas of the future, or simply bring our mindfulness up to speed. So as soon as a thought arises, as soon as a worry arises, as soon as there is anxiety, we can see it quickly, feel it in your body, see it in your mind, recognize it. This is why we spend so much time in meditation developing this quality of awareness, mindfulness. Mindfulness is not the be-all and end-all Buddhist practice. It's more than that. But you have to have mindfulness as a starting place. You have to start with that. Right? You have to have that as a place simply to be aware. What is the state of my mind right now? Is there a thought? Fine. Is there an emotion? Fine. Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? How did the Buddha define wholesome and unwholesome? So then we have a place to begin right effort. Without that, then we're living a very robotic life. External circumstances push our buttons, moods and emotions arise, that pushes our button, we react in a predictable way based on our social conditioning, based on our family conditioning, and then that controls our life. And one of the things that controls our life the most, if we're not very mindful, is fear. Call it insecurity, call it worrying, call it anxiety, but basically it's fear. Fear of what? Right? So what is it exactly that we're afraid of? Now, everybody has some fear. And like I say, not all fear is unjustified. There are actual real dangers in the world. But if you imagine what could go wrong, right, and you don't want it to happen, how are you going to make peace with that? Well, Imagine if you're gonna get lost in imagination, at least use your imagination in a wise way. So then imagine, yes, worst case scenario. What if this happens? Would I be able to deal with it? How would I deal with it? Would I be able to carry on? What would I feel? Now, in almost every case, we would be able to continue on. It wouldn't destroy our life. It might be difficult, it might be painful, but human beings, including ourselves, are resilient. We are able to carry on. And if you imagine yourself, the worst thing that you can imagine happening are the things that you're afraid of happening. And you just imagine, oh, I could still carry on. It's not what I want, but we don't always get what we want. We could still survive. We could still make it. We could still carry on. Life would still have meaning. I would still be able to do beneficial things. I would still be able to find something good to do in my life. Wholesome joy. And when you are able to make peace with your fears, then the fears don't have power over you anymore. So then you start to experience a certain freedom from fear. Freedom from fear is not being like macho and courageous in that respect. Freedom from fear is simply to approach it with wisdom, understand what it is. Realize, even if that happens, I could deal with it. Fortunately, most of the bad things that we can imagine usually don't happen. Sometimes they do. And the Buddha was very clear that samsara, or this conditioned reality that we live in, is it's a dangerous place. Realistic. So the realistic dangers are that the future is uncertain. We could die at any time. So that is good to make peace with, not to avoid. The Buddhists would say that those who are lost in delusion will tend to live in a reality of their imagined fears, but they would avoid looking at the realistic fears. So the Buddha sometimes quite strongly would point out the dangers of being in samsara. There are these qualities that we talk about in Buddhism. And one is a wise recognition of the realistic dangers in life. It's called ottappa, and in Pali. And another quality is usually go together as a pair. Another quality is a sense of like basically a conscience. It's called hiri. Hiri and ottappa, two very important qualities that, again, you have to have. You may not know the words, but in order for Dhamma to progress, you have to have these qualities. So hiri is a sense of, when you see something unwholesome, you have a natural sense of, yeah, I don't want to get involved with that. Sense of innate goodness, often, is what it is. You can't always teach that, but it is a quality that if we pay attention to it, it will grow. And it will lead to self-respect. Often we have many good qualities, but if we don't give ourselves credit, if we don't really fully recognize them, then we're overly self-critical. So if we do have good qualities, we all have some good qualities. Not all hopeless. No, we all have some good qualities. So when we do have good qualities, such as hiri, a sense of we have a natural reaction not to want to harm somebody, for example, right? or to get involved in something that would be to lead to someone else's suffering. So this is a good quality to have, and can make sure we don't get in too much trouble. Ottappa, the old-fashioned translation of ottappa was like moral dread, or they used to translate here in ottappa like guilt and moral dread. It was like, oh, I was really heavy. So, and then some New Age translations are just as bad, but in a New Age way. So what ottappa is more like a wise recognition of the effects of karma. The karmic effects of doing unwholesome karma is going to bounce back on us. It's going to harm others, or it's going to lead to our own harm. So when you have this understanding of karma, how it works, how our intentions can lead to thoughts, our intentions will lead to speech, our intentions will lead to actions, and these actions have effect, and we are the ones, first and foremost, who receive the results of these effects. So if we care about ourselves, as well as caring about others, then taking great care with everything we think, with what we say, with what we do, really helps then to guide our lives. And then you realize this karma is anything but fatalistic. It is this dynamic process where we can be fully engaged with creating our future moment by moment by how we react to the present moment. So ottappa is a recognition that, yeah, if we do something that's harmful to somebody else, it's not going to be beneficial for us. If we act on unwholesome thoughts or motivations, it's not going to benefit us. If we follow our defilements, there's going to be drawbacks. There'll be some karmic payback. So, that's wise. That's a realistic danger. If you've never practiced Dhamma long enough that you can't benefit from going back to the basics. Some people have been practicing Dhamma for decades, and still they haven't really, it's like they skip over right speech. Not really thinking about the karmic danger of speaking in a certain way, right? Gossip, criticizing behind somebody's back, creating disharmony, right? These kinds of modes of speech, they have karmic repercussions, and they're dangerous. And so it's wise to recognize that sometimes we can learn just by watching others as well. We don't have to experience all of the mistakes in order to learn from them. Sometimes we can watch other people's mistakes, learn from them, and think, oh, right, they're acting out of their defilements, out of their unwholesome mental states, and they're receiving the results of that. Have to be careful. So those are realistic dangers, and it is a wise thing to recognize them. It is a wise thing to make peace with the unpleasant things that can and will happen in life. One of our chants goes, we will be separated from everything that we love and cherish. It's like, or it sounds kind of depressing. But if you make, that's just reality. It's neutral. You look at it, you think, oh yes, that's right. We will be separated from everything that we love and cherish, one way or another. So that's just the way things are. Can we make peace with that? Can we accept that? If we can, it loses its power over us. The fear, the anxiety, the wish to control things, trying to run away. So much of what consumes people's lives is trying to control their life, manage their life. Simply making peace with whatever happens gives the people the security that we're looking for. It's not all of the managing our lives and controlling our lives that really will give us the security that we inherently wish for. It's actually making peace with the way things are. The way things are now, the way things could turn out in the future. So there are realistic dangers. If you live in California, in the forest, you have to make peace with the fact that your house could burn down. So this is a lesson for me. It's almost happened. To our Redwood Hermitage. I have a little hermitage in the Santa Cruz Mountains of California. Beautiful redwood forest. And last month, just everything was fine, and then within 48 hours, raging fire out of control that was headed towards the hermitage. And if the wind had blown in a different direction, the fire would have just devastated it. So as that was happening, so how do I respond? It's a good test. Could worry, could fret, could get upset, could be fearful, right? Natural. But again, I thought, well, what if it happens? What if everything burns down? All of that work, all the beauty of nature. Nature, it will recover, but it'll take a long time. And all the time and effort that's gone into that so far would have all just been gone, wasted. Well, can I make peace with that? I did make peace with it. There are many things that are out of our control, and wildfires, forest fires are essentially certainly out of my control while I'm here in New Zealand. Can't do anything about it. I can either suffer or I can make peace with it. So I learned how to make peace with it. And I kind of got my cake and eat it too on that one, because I made peace with losing it, but then the fire actually didn't burn it. There was no damage. But it's hard to really celebrate because so many other people did lose their homes. Some people lost their lives, but it was, devastating. Those are realistic dangers, and can really open our heart to see other people suffering. So much loss happening in 2020. So again, how do you relate to these dangers, these realistic dangers? Make peace with it. You try to avoid it. I mean, some people just avoid it. Just watch cat videos on YouTube to try to cheer themselves up, or just not think about it, which is only temporarily effective. But tuning into people's loss, when there is loss, there's a lot going on in 2020. People are dying from pandemic. It's out of control, and people are losing their livelihood. There's a lot of insecurity, financial insecurity, real suffering happening. And so it's an opportunity to open our hearts, even if we are not personally affected by it. We're all affected just because we have the knowledge, the awareness that it's happening. So not all fears are let's say, not all recognition of danger is unwise. A lot of the worrying that we do is just unnecessary suffering for ourselves. But there are certain ways of, if we recognize the actual dangers in life, that will transform how we behave. Sometimes there is something we can do about it. Like the old saying, you need to know in which situation you can actually take action. If there is something you can do to make the situation better, good, don't worry about it. Just do it. If there's nothing you can do to make the situation better, then just make peace with it. And then have the wisdom to know the difference. I remember when I was staying with teachers in Thailand, there's certain types of fears that came from even wholesome places. Not every type of fear is always unwholesome or wise. There's certain types of fear that came from respect. When I was on Tudong in Thailand, one of the many teachers I stayed with was a teacher named Ajahn Wanchai. He was a disciple of Ajahn Mahapua. Ajahn Mahapua himself was considered kind of a fierce Ajahn. And Ajahn Wanchai was very much in that tradition as well. And there were many great disciples of Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Mahapua at that time. So fortunately, I was able to go and stay with many of these teachers. And at that time there was so many great teachers. I wish I could have spent more time with all of them, but felt very fortunate. And Ajahn Wanchai was still relatively young when I discovered him. I was the first Western monk to spend the rains retreat with him. And when I first arrived at his monastery, I was pretty impressed that everything was incredibly neat, clean, tidy. I mean, everything was like very, very precise. And there was a community of about 50 monks. And I remember I think it was the very first afternoon that I was there. There was a great big bamboo platform. And we would gather there and sit on this bamboo platform. They would bring out hot water and drinks. So if you wanted to make yourself some tea or coffee or cocoa or something like that. And they would bring that out, and then everybody would just kind of sit around on this bamboo platform, and you could make yourself a drink. And there was kind of nice, friendly chatter. Everyone's kind of relaxed. And when Ajahn Wanchai he would kind of walk around the monastery and just check out to see how people are doing. And whenever he walked around, everyone was like, really, it was just watching the other monks. I was like, wow, they're just kind of afraid of him, but it wasn't an unwise fear. It was just like this tremendous sense of respect, which is such an important quality that we're losing in the modern age. A sense of respect for people who are worthy of respect. I mean, maybe it's because we don't have so many people in the modern world who are worthy of respect. I mean, we're all worthy of respect in the sense that we're human beings. But there are certain very impressive human beings. Ajahn Wanchai was one of them. And it was just like a natural reaction of, well, if he was around, then you would just immediately be on your best behavior. Right? I mean, what's the worst that he could do? He could maybe scold you in front of somebody else, in front of the community. But why would that be a problem? It's only because we respect him. And out of the 50 there was always some monks who, were like a bit off. Most of them were really high quality practitioners, very sincere. But you'd always get a couple that were a bit off. And I noticed it's like the ones that were a bit off are like, they didn't experience that sense of, it's almost like a wholesome fear of respect, fear that comes from respect. And notice, there's something wrong if people don't experience that, if you don't have that. It's not quite in balance. I remember my first rains retreat, I went and stayed with a disciple of Ajahn Chah, who had the reputation of being able to read people's minds anytime. Anyone in the monastery, he could know what you're thinking, know what mental state you're experiencing. And then they put me in the kuti right next to his, just to kind of rub it in. So then there was already a great sense of respect and admiration and love, for this teacher. And added on top of that was the sense of he could be watching me at any time. So out of respect, I would not want to be overly dwelling in any unwholesome states of mind. I'd be meditating and then thought arises. Oh, nope, don't think that. Oh, he might be watching. Right? So this type of respect, it's not an unwholesome fear. There's a little bit of a type of fear that's involved with that. But it's more a sense of, it arises from respect, and it also arises from a recognition that, there are legitimate dangers. If I allow any of the 5 hindrances to dominate my mind, then that's going to not be for my own benefit. That's going to have negative consequences. I'm going to allow unwholesome states of mind to take my attention away, meditation, then that's going to not be beneficial for progressing in peace and wisdom. So respect for teachers helps to sometimes bring that home. So today I just wanted to talk a bit about fears and what happens if we don't relate to the fears in a wholesome way. If we allow these types of unwise fears to take over, creates like a baseline of anxiety. Start to just carry this a sense of tension and anxiety around all the time. And even if we're not fully aware of it, it's very unpleasant. Can lead to depression. Another big problem that's happening 2020. Faced with sometimes actual dangers and faced with many imagined or unrealistic worries, dangers, combination can just be overwhelming for some people. Just lead to a sense of depression. So when we do experience loss in our life, and 2020 has been full of it. When we do experience loss in our life, something wrong with you if you don't feel sadness. Right? Of course you can. Any normal, sane person is going to feel sadness. It's unrealistic not to feel sadness. Sometimes in modern society, there's such a pressure to always be happy. It's not a good thing. Right? It's okay to feel sad, when there's loss. Right? Someone dies that we love. People lose their job. Sometimes people, the things that they were holding to for their idea of security, and they lose that. So it's absolutely normal to feel sadness. So I think it's sad that there's such a pressure in modern society to always be cheery. No, it's fine. Just that part's fine. Or sometimes there's such an unwillingness to just spend the time to digest it, look at it, reflect upon oneself. And then you just want a shortcut. Just give me a pill. Just give me a pill to make me happy, right? So that's not a helpful attitude either. Often the greatest progress we can make in wisdom is when we work through loss. Experience loss. Is it what we want? No, it's not what we want. Is it painful? Yes, it's painful. Are we going to avoid it? Try to pretend that we're cheery and just avoid looking at it? That's not helpful. So it can be hard work sometimes, but that's often where we make the most progress, where we can develop the most benefit. Ultimately, making peace with loss is that's just a metaphor for life in general and the whole relationship with samsara. So there are many ways of overcoming depression or not letting it get out of control. Right? And there's a difference between sadness and depression. If you're sad, that can be okay. Allow yourself to feel it. Whatever emotion you experience, feel it, be aware of it, acknowledge it fully. Notice if there's any resistance to feeling it, and then let it go. Just allow it to go. It will go naturally if we don't hold on to it. Anytime we're suffering, check, what am I holding on to? Anytime we're experiencing stress, anxiety, fear, we must be holding on to something. What is it? What is it exactly that we're holding on to? See if you can use your wisdom, use your intelligence to find that, pinpoint it. And often when we see it, then it naturally starts to unfold and evaporate. So there's much more I could say on that, but I want to leave some time for question and answers. So maybe I will conclude the Dhamma talk portion. And if anyone has any questions they would like to ask, discuss it.
Thank you, Tanajan. Let's all say 3 sadhus together. Andamayam ovadakatha sadhu karang kadamase sadhu sadhu